Good evening to everybody. Welcome to our introductory webinar. My name is Cristiano Gersi. I am with the Liquitex team, and I want to introduce to you Dr. Craig Tashman, our CEO and founder. Today, Craig will present an introduction of Liquitex. Actually, it is pretty similar to the one that we did last week. So after 30 minutes of more or less demo, there will be a good section of question and answer. So please be active and enjoy the session. So I will leave the show to Craig.
Thank you so much, Cristiano. And thank you all so much for coming. I really appreciate it. So as Cristiano said, my name is Craig Tashman. I am the founder and CEO of Liquitex, coming to you from just north of New York City. And what we're going to be talking about for me this evening is, for you guys morning, afternoon, and evening, is first, as Cristiano said, we're going to do a little background on Liquitex, just a moment or two. Then we're going to get to the fun part. We're going to walk through a basic Liquitex use case, show you guys the fundamentals of the tools and how they kind of work together to actually do a task. Then we're going to go on, talk a little bit about some of our newer features, some best practices, and we're going to end with a Q&A. So with that said, we're going to start with a little bit of quick background. Where did Liquitex come from? And it kind of came from this question, right? We know that computing helps us to find great content, to search and discover great content. And we know computing helps us to compose great content. But how does computing help us to understand the content that we found? How does it help us to annotate, digest, discover connections, make sense of content? And the problem there is, in a lot of ways, it doesn't. It turns out that like 80% of knowledge workers, from professionals to students, tend to prefer paper over computers. Oh my gosh, they prefer paper. That should make us all like step back for a moment. It means that for this really important category of human thought, of digesting, understanding materials, the technology that we've been creating has in large part been making things worse, not better. Well, why is that? What went wrong? Well, in a lot of ways, this comes down to the way that we've approached digital reading. We've kind of approached digital reading by taking traditional paper reading and trying to replicate it on a computer. And the problem is that doesn't really work. You end up inheriting the limitations of paper without really inheriting its benefits. So with Liquitex, we said, let's approach this differently. Instead of trying to replicate and build on paper, instead, we're going to try to understand how people think. How does the brain work? What do we actually need to do when we're reading? And so we did a whole bunch of research. This was 4 years of my doctoral research at Georgia Tech, 2 peer-reviewed papers published about Liquitex and the research behind it. And of course, my doctoral thesis, 270 pages. If you want to read it, I wouldn't recommend it unless you really are having trouble falling asleep. But the result of it was Liquitex. And the goal of Liquitex is to help you find information faster, help you to take better notes, and help you to discover the connections within your materials that you otherwise would have missed. So we launched in 2015 on iPad, and we launched on PC and Mac last year. We've been very fortunate, had some wonderful accolades. Apple called us most innovative app of the year when we launched. We've been in CIO, Macworld, New York Times, and Law 360 called us world changing. So we're really proud of these things. But let's get to the fun part of the presentation, the demo. So to demonstrate Liquitex to you, first of all, let's head on over to the Liquitex app here. And let's do this right, okay. Very nice. Now, I'm using a special demo version of Liquitex, so you'll see my fingers make these little blue dots when I touch the screen on my iPad here. Also, I'll be using my iPad for this demo, but everything I'm showing you is also beautifully functional on your Mac or your PC or any other machine that we support as well. So right now I'm in the Liquitex home screen, and I have my project here, McCaffrey stem cell case. Now, what is this project about? Well, for the purposes of this demo, let's say that I'm a lawyer and my client had some arthritis in her hip. So she got a new osteoarthritis stem cell procedure done that's supposed to cure her arthritis, but it didn't work. Instead, she just had some inflammation for a couple of days and no improvement in the arthritis. So she thinks the surgeon must have made a mistake. The surgeon says, no, she just wasn't a great candidate for the procedure, and that he told her this. So, I'm representing her. I want to figure out what's going on. So what am I going to do? Well, first, let's open the McCaffrey Stem Cell Project. I'll tap that, and that opens right up. And this is now the Liquitext editor screen. So let me walk you through this quickly. Over on the left here, we have our documents pane. So here it lists all the different documents that in this case I've already imported into Liquitext, but if I was starting a real new project, my first step would be importing the documents I need. Next, to the right of that, we have where we actually have our documents that we're reading. And then a little bit to the right of that, we have our workspace. The workspace is where I take and gather all of my notes, annotations, everything that's important to me as I'm going through my different documents here. So let's start then. So what is the first thing I want to do? Well, first again, my client said that she thinks she was a good candidate for this procedure. The surgeon said it failed because she was a bad candidate for the procedure. So let's start by finding out who's actually a good candidate for this procedure. So to do that, we're going to go over to our little documents list over here, and we're going to start with the regulatory bodies folder. So you see, I can take the different documents I've imported into this project, and I can organize them into folders. So we'll start with the ASCA, American Stem Cell Association, best practices. And, we'll scroll down a little bit. And obviously this is all fiction, the names, the procedures, everything. And we get to the medical prerequisites section. Well, this is very interesting. It says here, most adults are good candidates for this procedure. Well, I need to start taking some notes. So I'm going to go to my workspace. I'm going to hold my finger down for a second and tap text box and write, who is a good candidate for the procedure? All right, maybe I'll make this a little wider. I'll tag it in red. All right, very nice. So now I'll take this little note here, or this little blurb of text, and I'll drag it out of my document and into the workspace. Now let's just pause for a moment and look what we've done. First, I added a little note here of my own freeform text, and then I attached to that an excerpt that I pulled out of my document. So I can start gathering and organizing a mixture of my own notes as well as bits of information from my sources here in the workspace. Now you'll notice on the left of this little excerpt I pulled out, there's that big arrow thing. Well, what does that do? That is a link that takes me back to my source. So if I'm looking at something else, I can always tap this little link and look at that. It takes me right back to my source. Okay, well, that's great. So as I keep reading, it says here that in figure 1, they have a more detailed explanation of who is and isn't a good candidate for this procedure. So I'd like to compare this text to figure 1, but it's a few pages away. How am I going to do that? I really want to see them side by side. Well, normally comparing things on different pages is hard, but a big part of the point of Liquitext is helping you bring the important things together so you can see them at once and discover connections. So I can use 2 fingers and squeeze my document like this. Look at that. And I can bring the text and the image side by side. I can literally squeeze it together like it's rubber. And as I mentioned before, I happen to be doing this on my iPad, so I'm using 2 fingers on my touch screen, but this works just as beautifully with a mouse and keyboard on a desktop or laptop machine. So now let me select this little diagram here that gives the algorithm. I'll pull this out into my workspace, maybe shrink this guy down a little bit and attach it. Beautiful. So now I'm in a much better position. You see, I pulled together my own notes as well as text excerpts, as well as now even image excerpts from my source document and brought them together. But now let's go to the next step. Let's find out if our patient actually was a good fit for this procedure now that we have all this information. So let's go back to my documents list here, and I'll click on patient medical record. And now we have the patient medical record for my client, Arlene McCaffrey. We'll scroll down a little bit and we see that Arlene has diabetes, hypertension, and of course the arthritis in her left hip. So what are we going to do here? Well, let's look through this little algorithm here, and I'll tap on the pen button, and maybe I'll make the pen just a little smaller. And let's look over. Well, first of all, is she under 65? Yes, she is. Is she immune compromised? No. Does she have a history of carcinomas? No. And does she have high blood pressure? Yes, she does. So that means she's actually in the closely monitored category. So, it looks like the physician may not have been entirely wrong in this case. So let's write a little note about that. I'll tap here so I can add a text box. And I'll say, our client is in the closely monitored category. And I'll mark that in green and attach it like this. Excellent. Okay. So this is interesting. It sounds like, again, the physician might not have been entirely wrong, but I want to dig a little bit deeper. Why don't we find out exactly what the surgeon did and see if maybe the surgeon did anything that accidentally might have interfered with the procedure going correctly. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to create another little text box, and I'm going to say PR procedure. Yes, I cannot type today at all, but happily my iPad is helping me. We'll mark this in red. And now let's go and see what the surgeon did. So how do we do that? Well, we'll go back to our little documents list on the left. I'll tap depositions, and you see I have the deposition from the surgeon. I'll open that right here. Okay. So if we scroll down, you see that I've already highlighted the key points of the steps the surgeon took. I did this earlier. And now what I'd like to do is kind of see how one step flows into the next, see the bigger picture. But of course, these steps are on all different pages spread across the document. What can I do? Well, here I can use something really special. I can go over and tap the highlight view button on the top left here. And when I tap highlight view, if I then pinch, it brings all of my highlights together with as much or as little context as I need. If I want to dig in a little more deeply, I could just put my fingers around one of these guys and squeeze apart, and I see more context and squeeze together to see everything at once again. This is a really magical feature, and it really makes it, again, easy to see all of the important information to you all together. Okay, so now that we've done this, let's start taking some notes here. So we see, first of all, the surgeon, they started by growing the stem cell culture. So let's take this, pull it out, and attach it. I'll make this a little wider. All right, so now we go on. They prepped her for surgery as usual. I'll pull this out as well. Actually, I won't bother sticking these together. You notice I can stick things together to form little groups. And the beauty of that is then if I double tap, I can move the whole group around like this. But sometimes that's not what you need. In this case, I'm going to leave these guys disconnected. Okay. Now you notice another thing too. You notice I've already highlighted these points, and now I'm pulling out excerpts. It turns out that a lot of people like to use LiquidText that way. They kind of read documents in two phases. In the first phase, they go through, highlight anything that seems like it might be interesting or important. Then in the second phase, they go through and they take the most critical, interesting highlights and they pull them into the workspace. And LiquidText is designed to make this kind of workflow really smooth and easy. So if I see a highlight that's interesting, I just double tap it and it reselects, and then I can just drag it out into my workspace. Now you say, well, what if I'm dragging out hundreds of things? My finger might get tired. Well, don't worry. We actually have a nice tool for you there. I can tap auto excerpt, and LiquidText will automatically find the next available kind of empty spot and pull your excerpt right into it. So I'll tap this one, auto excerpt. See, it does the same thing. It's really cool. And one of the especially cool things is this, unfortunately, is only available on the iPad. But if you happen to have one, if you double tap your finger on the barrel of your Apple Pencil, you can have LiquidText do things like auto excerpt whatever text is currently selected, and our users absolutely love that. But okay, back to the story here. So going on, so we pulled out these excerpts of the different steps the surgeon took. They did a blood pressure check, performed the arthroscopic incision, and got ready to insert the joint spacer. But then notice what it says here. Then the deposing attorney said, "Did you do anything before that?" Oh well, gosh, that means that these two steps, drawing the bone fascia and removing the synovial fluid, actually came before this point about the joint spacer. Well, that's really important. And that's one of the great things about LiquidText. When the sequence of information that you need is structured differently than the way it's structured in the document, it's really easy to just pull things out and reorder them for your needs. So in this case, I reordered it for my needs, and I'll just move these guys over here. Okay, so now we go on. Then they dried the bone fascia, pull that out. They remove, hold on, we already have dried the bone fascia. Okay, they applied the ICM matrix gel. That's the important preparatory gel before they can add the stem cells. They let the gel cure for 15 minutes. That sounds important. We should probably note that too. And then they shaved off a small bone spur. Finally, they applied the stem cell culture and closed up the patient. Well, on the face of it, I don't see anything here that looks like it could be a mistake. It all seems very reasonable. But what I'd really like to do is check what the manufacturer says you're supposed to do, see if it matches. So I'll turn off highlight view here and the document unsquishes back to normal. And I'll go to another folder. I'll go to my Galaxidrin product info. That's the name of this product, Galaxidrin. So I'll go to the Galaxidrin product manual from Telenova Biosciences, scroll down here, and here we are, the overview of the application process. So let's just see what happened here. So first, do a pre-op, prepare the bone fascia, prepare the cartilage, prepare the joint, insert the joint spacer, apply the ICM matrix gel. Okay, yeah, they did that. Let it sit 15 minutes. Let's see, 15 minutes here. It seems to be very important. Remove the gel, add the stem cell culture, complete the surgery and close up the patient. Well, on the face of it, it seems like the surgeon followed every step perfectly into the letter. So I don't know, this is getting really tough now, but what could have caused this patient to get this inflammation? Well, maybe there's something in the phase 3 clinical trials that would help us understand this. So let's go back to our little document list here, and we'll go back to regulatory bodies, and I'll open the phase 3 clinical trial info for Galaxidrin. Now you see there's a lot of information here, but I want to just search for anything that might relate to inflammation. Now, one of the great things about Liquitex is we know people want to do searches all the time. And so we've tried to make that process really smooth. So of course, you can tap the little search button on the top and do your search, but there's actually a quicker way. You can just start typing. And so I can just type INFLAMM, have it here, inflammation, and press enter. And you'll notice what happens. As I start typing, Liquitex gives me a list of things that it can do with that word that I'm typing. So it can search my document, search my workspace. If I typed a number, it would say, do you want to go to that page? So it tries to make it really easy to just start typing, and it gives you options for what you can do with whatever you're typing. So in this case, yes, we want to search the document for inflammation. I'll press enter, and voila, it does the search. Now, what's really interesting about this is you'll notice it finds some examples, but I can do that same pinch, just like I did with highlight view, and bring all of my results together with as much or as little context as I want. And then if I want to dig in a little deeper, I just put my fingers around one of them, squeeze apart, and it gives me the added context around that one. So this is very similar to the highlight view, but it's absolutely magical, especially with text, because it gives you this sense that you can kind of pivot a document on a word or a phrase. And in this case, we found the one that we want right here. This looks really relevant to us. Let's dig in a little bit more. So I squeeze apart here, get more information. Maybe I'll turn off search. And it says, there was one instance during the phase 3 clinical trials where the administering surgeon applied the ICM matrix gel for only 2 minutes instead of 15, and that ended up resulting in joint inflammation with complete failure of the treatment. Well, gosh, that seems really, really similar to what happened to my client. But we know that in the case of my client, the surgeon said they left the ICM matrix gel on for 15 minutes. Well, so I don't know exactly what's going on, but this seems important. I'm going to take this, highlight it here, or select it, and just pull it out. We'll keep it in the workspace. Maybe we'll figure out if there's some connection as we go on. So given this, what could have caused this? Maybe the surgeon didn't actually leave it on for 15 minutes. So let's dig a little deeper here. Let's go and go back to the deposition transcripts here. And let's open, instead of the surgeons, let's open the lead nurse's deposition transcript. Interesting. And so we notice we've done the same thing that we did with the surgeon's deposition transcript. We've already highlighted the points that are particularly relevant to us. And so I'll do the same thing. Highlight view, pinch, squeeze it all together, bring all the highlights together. And now I can see them at once and start to scroll down. And what do I see here? Well, everything actually really looks pretty much perfect, right? The nurse specifically says, as soon as the timer hit 15 minutes, they removed the ICM matrix gel. I mean, again, it perfectly comports with what the surgeon said, but maybe there's something that we're missing. Maybe there's some inconsistency here. What I'd like to do is compare how the nurse remembers the procedure going and how the surgeon remembers it going. But how can I look at these two side by side? Well, this is another great thing about Liquitex. Again, see the important things together, discover connections. So I'm going to take the surgeon's deposition transcript, pull it out here, and display it right alongside the nurses. So in this case, I'm showing them one above the other, but Liquitex makes it very easy to just rearrange this to be horizontal. But on this particular screen right now, I kind of find the vertical a little easier. So now we can look at these together. And at first glance, it looks like everything is really like exactly consistent between these two. But as I look a little bit more carefully, I do notice a couple of interesting points. I notice that, let's see, I notice that both the nurse and the surgeon say that after about 10 minutes, they discovered a small bone spur. Okay, that seems reasonable. But the nurse adds one interesting piece of color to this. She mentions that then the doctor flushed out the joint with saline. Oh, that's really interesting. Let's highlight that in red for sure. If they flushed the joint out with saline after only 10 minutes, maybe they washed away the ICM matrix gel. Well, I don't know. There's still a lot more we need to learn about this, but first thing I want to do is, this is really important. So I'm going to double tap just this point here about the flushing debris out with saline, and I'm going to pull this out into the workspace. And likewise, this point about waiting 10 minutes, it's also pretty relevant here. I'm going to pull this out into the workspace as well, and I'll just connect all these three together. So this is interesting. Is it possible that maybe spraying of the saline did this? Well, I don't know. But first, before anything, I just discovered a really important connection here, and I want to capture this connection, right? This relationship between this document, the lead nurse's transcript, and the surgeon's transcript is really critical to my whole discovery here. So I'm going to go back to my pen, and I'm going to create a line from one document into the other, like this. And now look what's happened. Liquitex has created a live ink link crisscrossing between two different documents. And so if I close the surgeon's deposition transcript, I can always tap this little button and get right back to it from the nurses. And likewise, if I close the nurses, I can tap the little button on the surgeon's side and get right back to the nurses from the surgeon's side. So now my documents are interconnected with each other in whatever way I need, at whatever granularity I need. So this is great and really helpful. But now I want to try to find out, is it possible that spraying some saline into this joint could actually have had this effect? Well, to find this out, let's go back over to our documents list here, and let's go to the Galaxidrin manual again. And let's see if there's anything that suggests that spraying some saline could actually cause it to fail. Well, let's see. It doesn't exactly say, but it does say that you're supposed to leave the Galaxidrin gel undisturbed for 15 minutes. Undisturbed. Okay, well, we'll pull this out. This is significant, but it still doesn't really tell us whether or not spraying a little saline could have caused a problem like this. But where could we find that? Well, do we know, is the ICM matrix gel water soluble? Oh, well, I see we have the material safety data sheet for Galaxidrin here. Maybe that would shed some light on this. So I'll tap here, open the material safety data sheet, and see it's for Galaxidrin. We scroll down, and is there anything here that might reveal something about this? And I'm not sure. It's looking a little uncertain, but oh, here's something I found. Solubility in water, very high. Well, this is pretty important. I'll take this and I'll pull this out. This kind of is the linchpin. This closes our argument here. So I actually really want this to appear red in the document. So you notice I pulled this little excerpt out. If I want this excerpt, this excerpt, of course, is connected to a little highlight in the document. So if I make this excerpt red, you notice the little highlight in the document that's associated with it likewise becomes red. Just another thing to keep the excerpts you pull out and their representation in the document very tightly coupled with each other. Okay, so now I think I have a pretty solid argument for what's going on. So I want to capture this. So I'm going to tap here again, create another little text box, and we'll say conclusion. The surgeon accidentally washed off the before it had time to cure. Okay, so this is our argument. This is what we think is going on here. And I'll also mark this red. So, since this conclusion point here connects so much to these other excerpts, I'd like to capture that connection. And this is something that you can also do with these ink links that I showed you earlier. I showed you earlier an ink link connecting two documents, but it also works just as beautifully in the workspace. So I can connect these excerpts to this note together. And they're, again, live links. So I can start to build a mind map in my workspace if that's what I need. And likewise, because these are links, I can always tap one and get right to the other. So if this were a larger, more complex, realistic project, you could always tap one end of the link to get right over to what's on the other end of the link. Now, likewise, I've shown you how these links now work among documents and among workspace objects. But one of the most amazing things that you can do with ink links that people really just love is that you can connect documents to objects in the workspace. So for example, since this solubility in water point is so important here, I can actually just draw a line from the document right into this note and connect these two together. And so later on, I can always just tap this and go right back to what that ink link points to. And of course, it works the other way too. If I'm somewhere else in the workspace, I can tap this and get right back to that note. So in LiquidText, you can start connecting all of your materials, your notes, your documents, everything with these ink links. And so in effect, you can kind of start to build your own little mini personal internet over all the content that's important to you. Okay, so now we have all of this great material. We're really ready to go. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to share this, right? I might need to share this with some of my colleagues. I need to share this with the judge. Well, if these folks use LiquidText, then the easiest way to share this potentially is just to click send and go to send LiquidText file. And you can send them a file of this entire project. And next year, we're actually going to be debuting sharing and collaboration. So you could actually then just send them a link. But let's say you don't want to send them your whole project. You just want to send them kind of the final form linear document result of all this. Well, in that case, I can tap Notes Outline. And look what LiquidText does. It takes all of my notes from the workspace, all of my highlights from the documents, and compiles them together into a nice single linear document that I can send right over to Microsoft Word or whatever word processor I want to use. And from there, I can fashion into the final form to send off. Likewise, if instead I really want to send it as, say, a PDF version of this project, right? Maybe I'm sending it to someone who doesn't have LiquidText, but still wants to see these original notes. Well, in that case, I can tap send here, go to PDF file, and maybe we'll add all of these different documents, hit export PDF, it compiles the whole thing, and then maybe we'll send it off to our favorite traditional PDF reader, let's say Adobe Acrobat, and we give it a moment here, and you have your whole workspace. It's great. But the really great thing is, because we've also added in all the original source pages from those PDFs, I can tap any of these excerpts and it takes me back to the source. So I tap this guy and it takes me right to the page in the original PDF where I pulled this from, even though I'm using a completely different app. All right, now let's go back to LiquidText here. All right, cool. So we're basically done with this, but one other thing I want to show you. This was, of course, a really, really simplified project, right? In a real project like this, you'd potentially have 100 documents and you'd potentially have thousands of excerpts. So you might need some more ways to sort and organize them and find them. So one of the things that we've added lately that we think is really cool is tagging. So for example, if I take these excerpts, I might click these guys, go to tags, and say, let's add a category through the tags. Let's say these are review. And for the name, I'll say, let's say these are points where I think the surgeon did everything right. So I'll say correct. And we'll make this bright, positive green. And notice what happens, it adds little correct tags to all these. And now let's say this one though, here I think there was a mistake. So here I'll add tag. Actually, let's even select a couple. Let's say I think there were mistakes made in these two. And I'll go to tags, I'll go to category, likewise review, and it auto completes it for me. And for name, I'll put, let's say, mistake, and we'll make it a very intense bright red. And notice what it does. It just adds these in. And so of course I can go tap one of these and switch it between mistake and correct, add more tags, change tags, and all kinds of nice things like that. Likewise, if I say want to add a tag to this guy as well, one of the cool things that we have with this sort of just start typing feature is, even if I don't feel like bothering to tap the tags button, I can just start typing. So if I want to add the, say, correct tag, I can just start typing COR, and notice what it does. It says for the selected text, I can add a comment, or I can apply a tag. Apply tag, review, correct, and that's what I want. So I'll just tap that, and it applies the tag. So it's a really nice way to kind of get your work done a little bit quicker in LiquidText. Okay, so now I have these tags. Let's say I want to find a particular one. Maybe I want to find all the mistakes. So I tap our little search button up here, go to Workspace, select tags, and say I want to find all the mistakes. And then we press enter, and look what it does. It finds all the excerpts that are tagged with mistake. I can use next and previous to jump between them. And of course, I can zoom out to see all of them together. Okay, so with that, I'm done with the live part of the demo. The last thing I want to show you guys before we go to Q&A is one more feature of LiquidText that we're definitely very excited about, which is our syncing and backup. And unfortunately, that's kind of impossible to do in a live demo fashion. So we'll just head back to our little PowerPoint here, and let me just kind of walk you through this demo. It's a little demo video. So this is LiquidText's real-time sync. So in this case, we have a user using a desktop and a tablet at the same time, kind of taking advantage of each of them. So to start with, you see her creating some excerpts on her tablet, and these excerpts instantly appear on her desktop as well. Look at that, just like that. So she might take advantage of the large screen on her desktop to organize these things, right? Because you have that big, great screen, and it lets you organize things, get the big picture, see the overview, really taking advantage of kind of what a desktop is good at. At the same time, tablets are great for writing freehand ink. So she might have her tablet up as well, and there she does a little bit of freehand ink. And you see, within about a second or so, it pops up on the other machine. So you can really use them together. And likewise, she might use her desktop for something that desktops are great at, which is comparison across different documents. And in this case, she's going to actually create a link on the desktop and then follow the link on the tablet. Look at that. And so the idea behind this is to really make it easy to use each device in the way that makes the most sense for each step in your workflow. Okay, let's see. So I think that is about it. Let me know if there are any questions, guys.
All right. Thank you so much, Craig. So we are starting having questions here. First one being Jason, and he's asking, using on iPad, I write a lot of notes in the workspace. Can I lock the zoom to 100% so that when I'm moving around, my writing all comes out the same size across the entire workspace?
That's a great question, Jason. Thank you for that. We don't actually have a way to lock the zoom per se, because changing zoom is such a common part of the LiquidText workflow. However, we do have something that may help you here. First of all, as you change the zoom, we do indicate what the zoom is. Secondly, we do correct for the scale of, let me just scroll to somewhere else to make this a little more obvious here. We do correct for the scale of ink as you write at different zoom levels. So for example, if I write at 100%, let's say at 50% zoom, my line is very fine. If I zoom in to 180%, my line is quite thick. So we try to keep them about, so they end up being about the same regardless of your zoom level. The other thing you can do too is if you ever want to just get right to 100%, double tap out, double tap back in, it always takes you right to 100%. So what might be helpful for you is, navigate around with one finger. Whenever you want to zoom out, just double tap to zoom out, double tap to zoom in. And that way you'll always be alternating between kind of maximum zoom out and 100%.
Very nice, very nice. Let's go ahead. All right, too many questions here. So Robert is asking, any manual we can refer to as we learn its use?
That's a great question. Thank you, Robert. We don't have a manual per se, but we have our little help button on the top. The help button, we put a lot of work into that to have little, 10-second or so videos demonstrating all the major features of Liquitex, particularly the ones that are non-obvious, right? So anything from how do you create a highlight to seeing all your highlights together, you tap any of these and it plays a little video for you and gives you a little text explanation on the side of how you use that feature. So I would say this is a great starting point.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and let's pull out Conan. Are you going to enable drag and drop directly into the app?
We already do. Liquitex on all your devices should support drag and drop without a problem. So if you are trying to import, for example, a PDF or import an image into the workspace, or even drag and drop text from your web browser into the workspace, that should work on iPad, Mac, and Windows. If you're finding it isn't working right on any of them, maybe we have a bug, maybe you hit a corner case of a certain type of content we weren't expecting, but definitely let us know.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead. That's an interesting one, again, from Robert. Is it possible to arrange the material in a traditional map form?
Oh, that's an interesting question, Robert. Thank you for that one. No, right now, Liquitex does not have an automatic arrangement, right? Things are arranged the way you want to arrange them. It's really, by design, very, very flexible. But I'll tell you that we're interested in adding some more mechanisms for adding a little more structure to the workspace. Some things along the lines of maybe outlining or mind maps. So what I would encourage you guys to do is, after we're done with the webinar today, we're going to send you guys out an invite to join our new Liquitex forum. So you guys are going to be among the first to join. So you'll be, you'll get the joy of being able to create some of the questions and content and things like that. But that would be a great place for you to tell us a little bit more about the feature that you're looking for, what kind of mind maps you're interested in, and a little bit about your use case and your workflow. And I'll say this for everyone. After we send out the invites to our forum, please come. There's a section for feature requests. We'd love you to talk about it there. And you're always welcome to email us directly, always. But one of the benefits of talking about it on our forum is that other users can see it and comment on it and basically say, yeah, I really need this as well. And really, your feedback from all of you guys is what drives our product roadmap. So the more information we get about how many people want something, that makes it a lot easier for us to, kind of greenlight it.
Super. Themistocles is asking if there is a difference between highlighting with the A, the select text, and with the highlighter pen on the top bar.
There isn't really much of a difference. They both work about the same. They both work with highlight view, and it's just depends on, are you more interested? Oh no, I guess there is actually a difference. There is a difference. So if you highlight with traditional, let's go to a different document here. If you highlight with as text characters, then you kind of then you can always double tap the highlight to pull it out as an excerpt. If you highlight with ink, then that double tap feature doesn't exist. But really the vision of it is, it's kind of whatever you need. If you're more interested in, precision letter by letter, then, we give you that. But if you kind of more just want to go grab the pen in your hand as a highlighter and just go add free-form highlights independent of the exact structure of the text, then you can do that as well.
Very nice. I agree. Kim is asking if you have a tip on organizing your notes in the workspace such that when you export it, say in PDF, it will be in order.
Well, exporting in PDF, your best bet for that is just notice that the workspace is actually broken up into squares, right? Hold on, I have it tuned to be very, very faint here, but let's make it a little less faint. So let's take loose leaf, 8.5 by 11, and switch this to our current view. So now I've set up the workspace so it actually follows a certain, so the background follows a certain pattern, right? And so now if I go to export, each page of the workspace, each page of the export is going to map to one of these virtual pages in the background. So what I would say is pick the page situation that best kind of fits your needs. And then when you go to export, in fact, I'll be a little more concrete here. When you tap options, one of the options is match pages to workspace background pattern. Select that one. And then when you do your export, each page will basically of the export will correspond to one of these rectangles.
Not bad. Now, Kendra has another wish to talk about how to set up documents in an efficient way. He's saying, I'm managing a lot of papers for a doctoral program and trying to keep references organized in Zotero, but read and annotate in LiquidText. Would you like to expand on that, Craig?
I'd love to know a little bit more about the exact point where you kind of are looking, where the question refers to. In terms of how to organize the papers, I mean, the first thing I would say is, make use of the little folders that we have here, right? We really added them because we know a lot of folks add a lot of documents to the same project. If you're trying to organize a lot of papers into the same project, we would definitely suggest kind of categorizing them. Likewise, I would say it depends a little bit on your workflow, but in the workspace, one of the nice things that you can do is you can kind of make, you can kind of use the first area of the workspace as a place where you kind of give summaries of your documents, right? And so in the first, sort of square, you might say, document overviews, and you just kind of list them there with little notes that you write and then link to the individual documents. But I would kind of need a little more information to go deeper than that. One of the things that might also be helpful is tagging the documents, right? So you might be, tag the documents by author or journal. And we have tagging in LiquidText, as you saw, all over the place. The one place that we kind of don't have it right now is documents, but we're planning to add that within the next few weeks. So that may be very helpful for you as well.
Very nice, very nice. Brian is asking, how would you suggest students or researchers use LiquidText to study? I know that you love that.
Oh, that's a great question. Same concept, right? What's the best way to study with it? It depends a lot on what you mean by study, right? If I think of as a researcher studying a subject versus a student studying for a test, the goals in a lot of ways are different. But one of the things that we find that people really like, it depends on your style, right? Like some folks are very linearly driven. And what people will do is they'll make a big long column in the workspace for each chapter of their textbook, right? And they'll pull out, they'll handwrite summaries of the key points. They'll pull out excerpts and images in line with those summaries and just kind of have these nice big chapter columns. Other folks are more mind mappy, right? So it depends a little on the subject. So for example, folks who are studying complex systems integration tasks might, for example, have a couple of core thoughts and then use a lot of ink links through the workspace to show the relationships. But traditional sort of linear textbook studying, the chapter by chapter has seemed to do very well for a lot of our users. A point that I'll just emphasize again, I mentioned it very briefly, was depending on your workflow, one thing that a lot of folks like is to do the 2-pass approach, right? You do 1 pass through the document, highlighting the things that seem vaguely interesting or potentially important. And then once you get to the document, to the end of the document, and now you kind of have a sense of the bigger picture, what's really important and what's not, then you go back and you take the highlights that are most critical, you pull them out into the workspace and organize them together into groups. But again, it's all going to depend on what makes the most sense for your workflow.
Yep. Conan and Robert are asking if you can show again how to create the folders on the left sidebar,
of course.
and how to organize the documents within the folders.
Sure. So for example, let's take phase 3 trials of Galaxygen. Maybe I want to move that out of my folders entirely, just put it down here, and it pops right down here. And so the first thing I might want to do is create a new folder. So for that, I just press and hold for a moment. And if I was on my Mac or my Windows machine, I would right click and I have add to new folder. Tap add to new folder, we'll call it new folder. And voila, a new folder. And now I can just organize these by just dragging them around. So I can take this guy, drag it right up here to new folder. I can drag new folder, put it into depositions. I can make the folders nested just by drag and drop.
Perfect. Another one is asking if you can demonstrate how the highlighter pen looks in the workspace.
How the highlighter pen on the workspace itself. So if you draw on the workspace background itself, that's not kind of our principal way of our principal intention. It's more, the highlighter pen is more for the documents and the excerpts. If you do it on the workspace background itself, the colors kind of mix in, you know, you get more color mixing, especially because the workspace backgrounds tend to not be white. But it certainly can be done, and folks certainly do that as well.
Yep. Srinivas is asking an interesting question. Is there any option to compare multiple projects which are present in the home screen?
Oh, that is a really good question. The answer is no, there is not. We've had a couple folks ask for that and say, you know, could we have, you know, tabs for multiple, just like having actual multiple projects there. I would say, tell us more about your use case and your workflow. We're thinking about, like, we've had a few people say they'd like to kind of be able to bridge different projects, right? So have a link from one project into another and a lot of things like that. It's not a super common request, but we've had a few people asking for that. I'd say what would help us most is definitely afterwards, go on the forum, tell us a little bit more about your use case and your workflow. You know, the more information we have about these and the more we see, you know, kind of how other people respond to it as well, the better.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead. Jason is asking, using the iPad, the workspace is pretty small when I have a document at the size that is readable. Can I lock the panning of the workspace and the document together so I don't have to resize the document to workspace split every time I want to see more of the workspace?
So if I understand you, so first of all, thank you for that. If I understand you, you're saying that to get the document big enough to be readable, the workspace ends up being small and you want to have the document and the workspace scroll together. Cristiano, am I understanding that question right?
I think so.
Okay, thank you. So if that's what you're saying, right now we don't have a way to tie those two together. And the reason we don't, at least don't so far, is because the workspace is not necessarily linear. Like if you look at this workspace, I organize things, you know, different. I have things kind of going temporally sequentially down, then down in another column, then down in a third column. And so if I scroll to a particular place in the document, it would be very unclear what part of the workspace the thing should even scroll to match it. Now, that said, there might be ways of, you know, kind of resolving that ambiguity. You know, a little bit of clever UI around, you know, kind of having it in a certain narrow mode where everything is linear. I would say I'd love to know a little bit more about the particular situation you're describing, because like right now, generally, like what we would say is, you know, if you're, first of all, if your document, you know, has small text, well, we are very thankfully you can zoom it very nicely. And if you're really running out of space, you can tap the little button to close the document sidebar to give you a little bit more space. But if that's still, you know, if you're still really running out, you can always just pull things into the workspace, you know, like straight away, right? Just like auto excerpt, auto excerpt, auto excerpt, and just drag them over into the workspace. And then in a second pass, you can then go make the document a little smaller and organize these things in the way that makes sense to you. Again, that kind of two-pass approach, but not some, in this case, not highlighting and then excerpting, but excerpting and then organizing, which we find that can be useful for folks as well. But if that's, you know, still leaving you in a situation that doesn't feel like you have enough space and enough flexibility, please tell us about it on the forum. Tell us a little bit about the use case and kind of where you're running into a wall. We're going to be doing a lot of work on the workspace in the coming months, and we would love to hear everything we can about how we can make it better for you guys.
Absolutely. Here is a complex question, actually a bifolded question. When creating a comment about an excerpt in the workspace, it does not appear to be tagged as a comment. How can all the comments be searched for? And if the comments are spread around the workspace, can they be easily copied somehow? Or does each comment need to be manually selected for copying?
Oh, that's a good question. So if I understand, you want to make excerpts, then you want to make comments on those excerpts, which just for folks who don't know, I didn't happen to show this, but this is a very nice thing as well. You can, let's say we have a couple excerpts here. I can say, click these two and hit comment and write my comment, for example. And then see, it's a comment. And so if I tap this, it takes me back to the source. And of course, I could do this on individual excerpts rather than pairs. And so if I understand the question, it's how do I then, if I have, let's say, have a bunch of these comments on different excerpts, how do I take them all and only export or only select and copy the text of just the comments rather than everything? Right? If I want everything, that's easy, right? I just go to the notes outline export that I showed you earlier. But if I only want to do the comments, for example, that isn't really something we support right now. We've talked about ways to let you, for example, say, select everything that fits a certain criteria, right? So basically like a filter mode, a filter on the selector. But this wouldn't really be that because there's no way to even search for just all comments. Your workflow is really intriguing. I would say, please tell us a little bit more about it, on the forum or write to us, but please tell us a little bit more about your workflow and what you're trying to accomplish. And, we'll see if there's something we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And similar to the previous one, is there a way to drag an excerpt, for instance, the excerpt text from the workspace into, say, the body of an email message?
The easiest way is copy and paste. So select, copy to clipboard, and then just paste in your email program. And the copy works with like multiple units at once. So you can, let's say, select a bunch of things and hit copy, and it'll copy them all into the clipboard together.
Very nice. Some other question from Gerard. Do you think that LiquidText can be used for standard journaling activities so that I don't have to do journaling in one app, like GoodNotes and document project management in LiquidText app?
Yeah, that's kind of a $1 million question for us. We've been thinking a lot about that. So as you see, we really optimized LiquidText around this concept of reading and note-taking in this integrated form. And we know that you guys also have a lot of, pure note-taking tasks that you want to do that aren't actually document-centric. And, we know that we don't have a way to, like, say, create an empty project right now, or really, even something as simple as that. We've been thinking and talking about it a lot. I'll say that it's on our roadmap for, hopefully probably not this year, but, hopefully early next year. I would say right now, folks will do that by, say, importing a document of just blank pages, and then they just write on the blank pages, or importing a random BS document and then just shrinking it down and writing in the workspace. I know both of those are obviously awkward. This is why we want to give you guys a way better solution. But for right now, things like that should hopefully bridge the gap until we deliver you something a little smoother.
Very nice, very nice. Another one interesting from Ashley is, are there plans to make it easier to organize the workspace, like snap to columns, templates, and so on?
Yes, that's something we're actually thinking a real lot about. So I'll tell you, we've been snap to columns, maybe, but we've been talking a lot about, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, things like mind map support, things like outline support. We've been talking a lot about templates. This is like the perfect time for anyone who's interested in things like that. Please go on the forum. There's already several discussions going on about how to improve workspace organization. I'd love you guys to add to them. See the ideas that are out there and add, or add completely new ideas. This is like, we're literally in the early design process of this right now. I'm hoping that we can get out, some of the lowest hanging fruit before the end of the year. So maybe things like workspace pages, possibly. But we want to go a lot deeper than that. So please, this is the time to add your ideas.
And would you like to brief mention if there are guides, for example, for workflows using Liquitext? Brian is asking.
That's a great question. There are absolutely folks who've made videos demonstrating using Liquitext in education, engineering contexts, and things like that. We have a couple, so obviously the one that I just demoed for you. But if you go to our website, we also have our Honeybee demo, which is a simplified but the scientific workflow. We have our patent demo, which is kind of an IP law workflow. So we already have a few. We're planning on making more. But I would say that would be a good start.
Very nice. We are running out of time, and there are few more questions, but maybe we can squeeze in a couple more.
Let's do it.
Jason is asking, for PDFs without building in table of contents, I'm going often through a PDF to drag out titles for documents for each chapter and or section for documents. Is there any way to automatically detect and make a table of contents?
That's a great question. I'll tell you the answer is right now, no. And unfortunately, it's probably a thorny problem to solve, because PDFs are such messy, poorly structured beasts that it's kind of getting into a computer vision problem to solve that. So I would say I would love to do that. If we get enough people really saying that's like a killer feature for them, we could go license some more advanced computer vision models and try to incorporate that. Maybe we can find some heuristics and things, but I would say for right now, no, we don't. It's not on the roadmap just yet.
And I believe we have time for one more. Kendra, can you bring in a whole folder repository into Liquitext?
Yeah, you should be able to drag and drop. So it depends. Okay, let me qualify that. It depends a little bit on the operating system. There are certain interesting challenges with bringing a folder in on iOS. So on iOS, it used to be really, really easy. And then Apple changed around some of the APIs, and now importing an entire folder does not work as well. On Windows, thanks to our brilliant CTO and his amazing team, they have figured out how to crack this problem on Windows. So yeah, you can definitely do it there. If you're trying to do it on iOS, it's a little bit more hit or miss. I'm sorry to say, but if it's not working for you, please let us know and contact us. Even if we can't fix it, at the very least, we can raise its priority and maybe bug Apple and things like that.
Very nice. And I believe the very last one. Is there a keyboard shortcut for zooming out and in the workspace, or can it be later added?
Zooming out the workspace, is there a keyboard shortcut? I'm actually not sure offhand. Let me. I'm using a demo version of Liquitext here. I'm not sure if it's going to tell me. All right, hang on just 1 second. Let me just bring the app up on my other computer here, and unfortunately you won't be able to see this one, but maybe just if we have 15 seconds, really quick, maybe I can find out because I actually don't remember offhand. Yes, zoom all the way out. On a Mac, it is option O will do that for you. On an iPad, I don't believe I've ever actually tried this. So we're doing a live experiment right here. And look at that, it does work just like it should. So yes, option O will zoom out the workspace. Now, the only caveat is it will not zoom you back in again because it doesn't know where to zoom you in. So for that, you'll need to double tap.
How about the zooming in at this point?
Zooming in for that, you'll need to double tap, right? We don't have, there's no keyboard shortcut for that.
There you go. All right. Well, Craig, thank you so much. We had a lot of fun. Thank you so much to everybody for the very interesting questions. There are a few more other that we'll try to answer offline, maybe. Again, I hope you enjoyed this session. There will be many more in the future. Please reach out to us, to our support, if you find something that is not exactly how you suggest and you're supposed to have. We are always eager and hungry about new ideas, feature requests, and so on. Follow us on every social media you can imagine. And thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Thank you so much, everyone.